From the time you were a child, there was something in your eyes that others couldn't explain. A depth, a weight, a wisdom that didn't match your age. You'd look at your old pictures and see a child who was too serious, too sad, too distant, and no one around you seemed to notice. But you noticed. And that feeling of being different never went away. If you grew up feeling like you never fit in, like you were too strange for your own family, like the atmosphere changed when you walked into a room, like people looked at you as if you were too complicated, too intense, too sensitive, then this message was made specifically for you, because what you experienced wasn't madness, it wasn't weakness, it wasn't a problem. It was the first visible sign of something heaven was building in silence. Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you 7 signs that appeared in your childhood that prove, with clarity, that you carry a calling above the ordinary. And more than that, I'm going to show you why the enemy knew it before you did. There's a truth most people can't face. The spiritual attack begins before you even understand what faith is. It begins in childhood, it begins early, and it begins early precisely because what is in you is too threatening to wait. Look at the story of Moses. Pharaoh decreed the death of the Hebrew babies because the enemy knew a deliverer was coming. He didn't know who it was, but he knew something was being birthed in that generation, and he panicked. He acted preemptively. He tried to kill the promise before it had a name. You went through something similar. The attacks that came against your life when you were still a child weren't random. They were precise. They were targeted. And today, looking back, you can see the protective hand that was over you in every moment you should have been destroyed and weren't. So pay attention to these 7 signs, because each one is a chapter in a story that isn't finished yet. The first sign: you never fit in, not even in your own family. You grew up inside a home and yet felt like a foreigner. Your tastes were different. Your questions were different. While other children... Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. And played with lightness. You'd stare at the sky wondering about the why of things. Your family said you were difficult, complicated, that you thought too much. But that wasn't it. You were on a different frequency. And there's nothing more lonely than being surrounded by people and not being able to truly connect with any of them. In our culture, this is even more painful, because here, family is everything. The Sunday dinner, the backyard barbecue, the holiday gathering, and you were there physically present but internally miles away, feeling like there was a conversation no one around you could have, a depth no one was willing to access, and the pain wasn't just the loneliness, it was the guilt that came with it, because you tried to fit in, you tried to like the same things others liked, tried to laugh at the same jokes, tried to get excited about the same achievements, and you couldn't. And then came the cruel question, what's wrong with me? Have you ever asked yourself that? If there's something fundamentally broken in you that keeps you from being normal, from being simple, from being like everyone else, there was nothing wrong with you. The problem was never you. The problem was the container. You were a plant growing in a pot that was too small, and a plant that grows in a small pot isn't problematic. It just needs soil compatible with the size of its roots. But you know what happens when God is forming a vessel for extraordinary purposes? He allows an isolation that feels like rejection, but is, in truth, protection. Because if you had completely fused with the environment around you, you would have absorbed the limits of that environment, and the calling in you doesn't fit within the limits that were imposed on your family. You weren't rejected, you were set apart. And there's a huge difference between the two. The second sign, you escaped accidents or illnesses that should have taken you down. Think with me. Is there something from your childhood or your teenage years that when you tell someone, they are left speechless and say, "But how did you survive that?" It could have been a car accident, an illness doctors couldn't explain, a situation of violence you walked away from unscathed in a way that defies all logic. It wasn't luck. Luck doesn't come in such concentrated doses. Psalm 91 speaks of a level of protection that isn't given to everyone in the same way. It speaks of angels who receive specific orders about a specific life. And when you read, "He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways," you need to understand there are lives upon which that order is executed with surgical precision. Yours was one of those lives. Think about the statistics. How many children go through situations similar to yours and don't survive? How many families have lost children in accidents less severe than the one you experienced? This isn't to be morbid. It's for you to see clearly what was happening. The hand that held you wasn't invisible by chance. It was discreet because divine work rarely comes with a public announcement. It simply happens, and only later, with distance and maturity, can you see the dots connected. Every time you should have been destroyed and weren't, the enemy lost a battle. And each lost battle increased the adversary's anger and determination against you, which means the next attacks would come more sophisticated, more disguised, no longer in the form of physical accidents, but in the form of thoughts, of relationships, of opportunities that came and vanished, of promises that always seemed to be for later. But God remained in control, as he always has been. The third sign, your mind was a battlefield from childhood, anxiety from an early age, fears that had no explanation, thoughts that came from nowhere and didn't seem like your own, but were so intense you thought you were going crazy. Many people who carry a prophetic or apostolic calling report exactly this. The mind was the first target, and it makes sense, because it's in the mind that visions are born. It's in the mind that strategies are conceived. It's in the mind that faith turns into action. If the enemy can contaminate the command center, he compromises the entire mission. That's why the mental attacks you suffered weren't just a clinical diagnosis, they were war. Of course, there are biological components in anxiety and depression disorders, and taking care of the medical aspect when needed is wisdom, not weakness. But there's a spiritual layer that medicine cannot reach. There's a level of internal pressure that goes beyond brain chemistry. When you were at your worst in your head, when the weight was physical, when getting out of bed seemed impossible, there was a voice whispering that it would be easier to give up, that you weren't enough, that no one needed you, that the world would go on without you. That voice was never yours. It was the thief, and he used your own mind as a microphone. But here's what he didn't count on. Every time you got up, even without strength, every time you chose to keep going, even without seeing the path, you proved there was something in you that didn't belong to him. A resilience that wasn't human, a faith that refused to die. And I need to tell you something important. The fact that you're still here, lucid, seeking answers, listening to this, is proof enough that the campaign against your mind failed. The enemy threw his best at you, and you're still standing. That's not a minor detail, it's victory. The fourth sign, you had an unusual capacity to feel what others felt. From an early age, you'd walk into a room and pick up on what was in the air before a single word was spoken. You'd arrive at someone's house and know, without anyone saying anything, that there had been a recent fight. You'd look at a smiling person and know that inside they were shattered. This isn't a common skill. It's a gift. And like every gift, it came with a price, because when you feel everything with that intensity, the world around you can become oppressive. The noise that for others is just noise, for you is deafening. The superficiality of trivial conversations tires you in a way that's hard to explain. You needed more depth, truth, real connection. And since the world around you rarely offered that, you often preferred solitude. Not because you were antisocial, but because your soul needed silence to hear what was being communicated on a higher frequency. Have you ever stopped to notice that at family gatherings, parties, social events, you were often the one in the corner observing? While everyone laughed loudly and interacted without filter, you were analyzing, reading the dynamics, noticing who was pretending, identifying the tensions nobody mentioned but everyone felt. And most of the time, you were right. This gift of reading the environment and people is rare, and it's sacred. This gift of perception is what the prophets of the Old Testament carried. It wasn't supernatural in a science fiction sense. It was a sensitivity tuned by the Spirit, allowing them to perceive spiritual currents before they manifested in the natural world. You've always been like that. And if today you still wonder why you get so drained so easily in certain environments or with certain people, now you have the answer. You're not just interacting, you're perceiving, you're processing on a level most people don't even know exists. The fifth sign, you attracted broken people and carried their weight as if it were your own. This is going to hit deep, because if you identify with what's been said so far, you certainly identify with this too. You've always been the person others called when they were at rock bottom. You were the shoulder, the counsel, the embrace. People you barely knew told you things they'd never told anyone, because there was something in you that created safety, a presence that said, it's safe here. Here you can be real. This is a gift of healing, and it's one of the most precious and most exploited gifts that exist, because broken people seek out those who can restore them. And a natural healer like you shines in a way that in the spiritual world is like a lighthouse in the middle of the sea. Ships in distress always look for the light. The problem is, when the ship is so damaged, it threatens to sink the lighthouse with it. How many times have you emptied yourself to keep someone else standing? How many times have you set aside your own process, your own pain, to give attention to someone else's pain? How many people drained your energy in a way that left you dry without understanding what had happened? This has a name: emotional vampirism. And the enemy, knowing your gift, strategically sends people into your life who feed on your light. Not necessarily out of conscious malice, often out of their own misery. But the effect is the same. You leave every interaction emptier than you entered, and the worst part is, you feel guilty about it. Because you have compassion. Because you know what it's like to suffer. Because you can't close the door on someone who is weeping. That compassion is genuine and it's beautiful, but it needs wisdom so it doesn't become a trap. The lesson heaven was trying to teach you, and perhaps you're still learning, is this: you cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your oil is sacred. You need to keep some of it for your own flame. Compassion without limits isn't a virtue, it's self-destruction. And God didn't put you on this earth to be consumed in serving those who will never grow. He put you here to serve those who are ready to be transformed. The sixth sign: every time you were about to advance, something got in the way. You know this pattern intimately. Everything seems to align. An opportunity arises. A promise begins to materialize. And then, out of nowhere, the car breaks down, an unexpected bill arrives, a fight erupts, a key person disappears, a health issue appears, and you're left there, looking at the pieces, wondering if it's you who's wrong, if there's some curse, if God really has a plan for your life, or if it's all just an illusion. It's not you. It's not a generic curse. It's specific warfare. In the book of Daniel, the angel sent with the answer to Daniel's prayer was detained for 21 days by the spiritual prince of Persia. 21 days. The prayer was heard on the first day. The answer was sent on the first day. But the delivery was delayed because there was resistance in the way. What does this mean for you? That the delay isn't a no. That the obstacle isn't a sign you made a mistake. That the resistance you face is proportional to the level of what you're about to receive. The enemy doesn't attack the irrelevant. He doesn't mobilize resources against someone who doesn't threaten his kingdom. If you've been facing disproportionate resistance, if the delays have been constant and inexplicable, that is, paradoxically, a confirmation. The level of your war reveals the level of your mantle. And there's one more thing that needs to be said here. The pattern of interruption has a cycle. You notice when you're getting close to something big because the distractions get more intense, the problems get more urgent, the emotions get more unstable. This isn't coincidence. It's the enemy's alarm system going off. And when you learn to recognize this pattern, it loses the power it had over you. Because you stop reacting as if it's a crisis and start treating it for what it is, a sign that you're on the right path. And you know what's even more important to understand. He cannot nullify God's plan. He can only try to wear you out until you give up before receiving. The only way to lose this battle is by quitting. And you've come this far. That in itself is proof you're not going to quit. The seventh sign, you were betrayed by the closest ones, and that betrayal changed the course of your life. This last sign is the most painful, and that's why it's saved for last. Because to understand this one, you need to have gone through all the others. The kiss of Judas. You know exactly what that is. Not figuratively, but literally. Someone you loved, someone you trusted, someone who knew your secrets and your vulnerabilities, used that very knowledge against you. The most painful betrayal always comes from those who had privileged access, and in the moment it happened, it seemed like the end. It seemed like everything you had built had crumbled, that people were all the same, that trusting was a mistake you would never make again. But look at where you went after that. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, falsely accused, imprisoned without trial. And each of those betrayals was another step toward the palace. The brothers thought they were eliminating the competition. They thought they were getting rid of the dreamer. But they didn't know they were being used as instruments, without realizing it, to fulfill a purpose that was beyond their comprehension. You weren't buried, you were planted. Seed and garbage end up under the ground the same way. The difference is what happens afterward. The garbage rots, the seed germinates, and the betrayal you suffered, as painful as it was the catalyst that moved you from where you were to where you needed to be. The people who tried to destroy you with words, with lies, with slander, with sabotage, these people are in panic now. Because the campaign against your reputation isn't random bullying. It's the enemy's panic in the face of the platform you are about to occupy. God doesn't remove your enemies before your blessing. He prepares a table for you in their presence. He lets them see, he lets them witness, because your public restoration is the definitive answer to every private accusation made against you. Now I want you to stop for a second and think about everything you've just heard. You weren't the black sheep because something was wrong. You were the black sheep because you had something the environment around you couldn't contain. Your intensity wasn't a problem, it was prophecy. Your sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was a gift. Your loneliness wasn't punishment, it was schooling. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before seeing the burning bush. David spent years in the mountains fleeing from Saul before sitting on the throne. Paul spent 3 years in Arabia after his conversion, in silence, being formed before beginning the ministry that would change the world. The time you spent in the desert wasn't wasted. It was invested. And there's something that happens in the desert that doesn't happen anywhere else. You learn to listen. The noise of the world fades. Human validation disappears. The applause vanishes. And what's left is just you and God. And it's in that forced silence that the deepest callings are revealed. Not at conferences, not in services with multitudes, in the silence, in the solitude, in the discomfort. That's where God speaks with a clarity no other circumstance can produce. And there's something that needs to be said with all clarity. The enemy wouldn't attack you with such insistence if there weren't something in you he needs to destroy. He doesn't mobilize armies against the irrelevant. The persecution you've suffered since childhood is, in itself, a credential. But here's what no one tells you about the calling. It doesn't come with an instruction manual. It doesn't come with a guarantee it will be easy. It comes with an internal certainty that doesn't go out, even when everything around you says to give up. That quiet voice that tells you there's more, that tells you there's a purpose, that won't let you settle for the mediocre. That voice is real. And it won't go away because it can't. You need to understand what's happening spiritually at this moment in your life. If you're going through an exposure of people around you, if relationships that seemed solid are being unmasked, if people who smiled in your face are showing what they really thought of you, this isn't coincidence. This is cleansing. God is moving obstacles out of the way. He's silencing accusers. He's neutralizing threats, because there's a level of mission that cannot be fulfilled with certain people in your circle, not because they are necessarily malicious. Sometimes because they simply weren't made for the next chapter of your story. Every door that closed in your face was protection. Every no you received was redirection. Every relationship that ended sooner than you wanted was divine intervention. Because there was a serpent in the room, and if that door had stayed open, the serpent would have come in with it. You weren't rejected. You were hidden in the shadow of God's hand. There's a huge difference between the two. Now I need to talk about something that will be uncomfortable to hear. The calling you carry demands a transformation you cannot outsource to anyone. There's no pastor who will do it for you. There's no third-party prayer that substitutes for your process. There's no anointed person who will free you from something you're still feeding internally. Because the greatest battlefield has always been internal. The anger you hold, even if justified, is keeping you tied to the past. The bitterness that seems righteous, given all you've been through, is poisoning the seed God is trying to make germinate. The wounded pride that still cries over the betrayals instead of getting up and moving forward is being used by the enemy to keep you stalled. Forgiveness isn't saying what was done to you was right. Forgiveness is refusing to carry the weight of what others did. It's you setting yourself free, not the other person. And that's hard, because you have every right to be hurt. You were genuinely wounded. You were genuinely betrayed. You were abandoned, misunderstood, slandered, sabotaged, and all of that was real. But you can't reach your destination carrying the weight of what's behind you. Every mile you advance with that weight is a mile you go slower than you could. And the destination God prepared for you requires speed. It requires lightness. It requires your hands to be free for what lies ahead. There's a dimension to this calling that very few people talk about, and it's about the cost of visibility. Because when your purpose begins to manifest publicly, when the voice the enemy tried to silence starts to be heard, when the platform starts to grow, a new war begins. No longer the war of obscurity, the one that kept you hidden, doubting yourself, wondering if there was something in you. Now it's the war of visibility. And that war is different. It comes with the envy of people who knew you before and can't handle seeing you grow. It comes with the criticism of those who never tried anything but have an opinion on everything. It comes with the temptation to compromise the calling to please larger audiences. It comes with the pressure to perform a version of yourself that isn't true, because the audience built around your pain sometimes expects you to remain wounded to identify with you. But you need to grow anyway. You need to advance, even if it disappoints those who would rather see you stagnant. Your healing isn't a betrayal of your testimony. It's the most powerful testimony you can offer. Because when someone who lived through everything you lived through, who was attacked like you were attacked, who was betrayed like you were betrayed, gets up and flourishes, that isn't luck. That's proof. It's proof that the God who promises is the same God who fulfills. It's proof the enemy can delay but cannot stop. It's proof that a seed planted in fertile soil, watered with faith and perseverance, inevitably germinates. Your story isn't just yours. It belongs to every person who is where you've been and doesn't yet know it's possible to get out. Every time you choose to move forward, you're paving the way for someone coming behind you who needs to see that you can make it. You remember those old pictures I mentioned at the beginning? That child in your eyes, too serious, too deep, carrying a weight that wasn't hers, but that she refused to put down. That child wasn't wrong for being different. She wasn't wrong for feeling more. She wasn't wrong for not fitting in. She was right about who she was, even without the words for it. She felt there was something. She felt there was a purpose. She felt there was a calling, even without understanding what calling meant. And here you are, years later, listening to this, recognizing each sign as if it were your own story being narrated. Because it is. Because the Holy Spirit didn't bring you here by accident. Because every click is an answered prayer. Because every piece of content you engage with about identity, calling, and purpose is the echo of that child who always knew there was more. You weren't crazy, you were marked. So what do you do with all this? First, you stop apologizing for who you are. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces not made for you. Stop softening your intensity so as not to scare others. Your depth isn't a flaw to be corrected, it's a gift to be honored. Second, you begin to protect your energy with the same seriousness with which you protect your time and your money. Not everyone deserves access to your presence. Not every request for help is a divine summons specifically for you. Learn to discern the difference between a calling and an emotional manipulation. Third, you take the process seriously. That means consistent prayer, not just in crises. It means reading the word as nourishment, not as an emergency remedy. It means community, not complete isolation. Even the most solitary of callings need at least one or two who see what they carry. Fourth, you stop waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect moment doesn't exist. The calling doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Did Moses feel ready when he saw the burning bush? He argued with God about why he wasn't the right person. Jeremiah said he was too young. Gideon said he was the least of the smallest tribe. And God used all of them exactly as they were, with the insecurities, the limitations, the scars, because the calling never depended on your perfection. It depended on your availability. Fifth, you continue. Simple as that, you continue. Because the enemy won every battle you quit, and lost every one where you got up the next day. There's one last thing that needs to be said. The restlessness you feel inside, that frustration with injustices, that grief over things the world ignores, that desire for things to be different, that isn't meaningless anxiety. That's the heart of God beating within you. When God decides to use someone, he places his own heart inside that person. And the heart of God feels what he feels. It feels the pain of the forgotten. It feels the weight of generations stuck in cycles no one wants to break. It feels the urgency of the time. That's the prophetic burden. And if you carry that burden, it's because you were chosen to do something with it, not to keep it, to release it. The world needs the voice the enemy tried to silence from your childhood. The people around you need the healer who almost destroyed herself serving those who weren't ready to be healed. The generations coming after you need what you learned in the desert, in the betrayals, in the delays, in the solitude. Nothing you went through was in vain. Every scar is a diploma. Every defeat that taught you something is a chapter in the book you will still write, literally or metaphorically. Every moment you survived when you shouldn't have is a testimony that will still free someone who is exactly where you've been. You didn't get here by accident. You were chosen from the cradle, and the enemy knew it before you did. But now you know too. And that knowledge changes everything. If this touched something inside you, if you recognized yourself in any of these 7 signs, I want you to do one thing now. Leave in the comments which of the 7 signs you identified with most. It doesn't have to be a long text. It can just be the number. But that is a declaration. It's you saying to the spiritual world, I know who I am. I accept my calling. And I will no longer hide. And if you want to go deeper, if you want me to create attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.